Good afternoon. We're really happy to hear that everyone has had a very rewarding day. I would now like to introduce Derek Wu, who will be welcoming our final keynote speaker. Derek Wu is Vice President of Global China Connection, Princeton. Derek is a sophomore majoring in public policy at Princeton with a certificate in finance. Let us welcome Derek Wu.
Thank you, Laura. As Laura said, I'm Derek Wu. I'm the guy who sent you all the emails, recklessly spamming all your inboxes. So I hope you'll forgive me. I hope you guys had a great day at the conference. We had hosted programs planned for you, and hope you enjoyed them all. First, I'd like to thank actually the speakers and the panelists for executive seminars, panels, and keynotes who really made this conference what it is, and we'd like to thank you. Also like to thank GCC Central, delegates you brought, and the Tsinghua delegation for coming today. I'd like to thank those of you students and other community members who are from other GCC chapters or just students from other schools coming to check out Princeton GCC and what Global China Connection is all about. Thank you for coming. And last but not least, I'd like to thank the members and executive board of GCC here at Princeton. We have an exec board of about 8 people, but a member group of approximately 40, and that came to literally every weekly meeting for the past 4 months. And it's a testament to them that we were able to plan such a great conference. So if you guys could either stand up or wave, give you guys a shout out. So we have one more treat for you today. Mr. Thomas Gorman. He's chairman of Fortune China Magazine and CCI Asia Pacific Limited. Laura and I had a chance to talk to Tom about an hour ago, and he told us that his interest in journalism really started at a young age, and that if his activities in Hong Kong didn't work out, that he'd be a writer. He's a proud graduate of Princeton, majored in East Asian Studies, and he's actually spent more time in Hong Kong than he has in the States. He spent 36 years there. And this is actually his first time back in the Princeton, New York area in 25 years. He's past chairman of the American Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong, and also the past board chair of the Hong Kong International School. But you can all read that in his bio given to you guys. So without further ado, let me introduce Mr. Thomas Gorman.
Thank you, Derek. Does the sound okay up in the bleachers? I guess so. Thank you for that kind introduction, and thank you all and the colleagues at GCC for the invitation to be here. It's a happy occasion for me on many levels. Actually, I have been back to New York more recently than 25 years, but I haven't been back to the campus in about 25 years, so it's very special. I think given the closing slot at a conference like this, it's best to focus on the future. And I was given the suggestion that for the undergraduates present here today, some comments about career opportunities and career perspectives might be in order. So that's what I've prepared, particularly a career with regard to involvement in China of one sort or another. And when I sat where you're sitting, there were very few sources for that kind of advice, nor were there really many job opportunities in the market. Times have really changed, and I applaud the good work of Global China Connection in general, and specifically also because I think it's a very valuable networking opportunity for young people to figure out what some of the career options are. They're not all obvious ones. So what I thought I'd do is begin my comments by talking about how my career got started, beginning with the study of Chinese. And I'll talk a little bit about moving to Hong Kong in 1974, where I intended to remain briefly, rather than 36 years and counting, and share a few impressions of China in the mid-'70s, when I first went there, and talk a bit about how my career developed from that. And then I'm going to offer you some unsolicited career advice at the tail end of this. For me, the opportunity to study Chinese dropped somewhat unexpectedly into my lap after my first year of high school. I grew up in the Chicago area, and in 1967, I received a computer-generated form from my high school, which contained my recommended courses for the second year. And unbeknownst to me at the time, that little IBM printout was a major turning point in my life. I'd gotten good grades in Latin in my freshman year, and so the honors course that was recommended for me for sophomore year involved ancient Greek as well as Chinese. In hindsight, the logic of linking success in Latin with probable success in Chinese, a little dubious, but I didn't question it at the time. Studying Chinese in those days, remember this is the mid-60s, was considered weird. Not just slightly weird, but extremely weird. Why study the language of Red China? Memories of the rabid anti-communism of the McCarthy era were still very fresh in people's minds. China was still locked in the turmoil of the Cultural Revolution. What are you going to do with that when you grow up? Asked one neighbor. Open a laundry? It's a true story. The prevailing mindset of the day was that China was isolated from the rest of the world and would remain so for the foreseeable future. The idea that it might become an engine for job creation was extremely far-fetched. Someone else warned me about possible subliminal communist brainwashing buried in the contents of the Chinese language textbooks. Be careful, Tom. True. This, too, was a reflection of the Cold War attitudes, which were common in those days. On the other hand, the college counselor said it would look great on my college applications in a few years' time. And on a personal level, there was something exotic and appealing about studying Chinese, maybe associated with photographs and articles I'd seen in magazines like National Geographic and Life while growing up, photographs of China and Asia. The remoteness and mystery of the place stoked my curiosity, and like many of my contemporaries, what I think was really intriguing about China arose from its rich history, culture, literature, and philosophy. But there wasn't much of a job market awaiting graduates with Chinese skills. At the same time, it seemed logical to me that this would eventually change, and that we would need people capable of engaging in conversation with this giant and important country. As Derek mentioned, I became interested in writing at an early age. And I worked for the high school paper, and over time I developed the notion that perhaps I could put my interest in writing together with my interest in China. But at the time, this seemed like a real long shot. I mean, there were no American journalists or business people, for that matter, in China. And so, anyway, I held on to that dream. I still recall very clearly the first day of Chinese class in 1968. Our teacher was a soft-spoken Chinese priest from Taiwan. After a brief introductory talk, Father Zhang played some Chinese language tapes for us on a reel-to-reel tape recorder. There were 24 of us in the classroom that first day, and as soon as he turned on the tapes, we all collapsed into hilarious gales of laughter in response to the sound of Chinese being spoken, which we'd never heard before. Not to mention the preposterous notion that we were going to learn how to imitate, emulate, or mimic that imponderable sing-song gibberish. Starting the next day, there were 12 of us in the classroom. The other 50% just dropped out. My second year, we had a new Chinese teacher, Mr. Guo, a layman, also from Taiwan. He had literally just arrived in the United States. By now, we survivors of first-year Chinese were battle-hardened veterans, and we quickly sized up our new teacher as innocent, gullible, and unfamiliar both with American culture and our school rules and regulations. Unfortunately for Mr. Guo, this was a powerful invitation for the mischievous streak in us 16-year-olds and we took advantage of that. A couple of examples I have to share with you. One Friday early in the semester, Mr. Guo announced that there would be a test the following Monday. One of my classmates raised his hand and politely protested, saying that in America's democratic tradition, scheduling a test was normally achieved by a vote rather than an autocratic decree. Mr. Guo accepted this suggestion, and a prolonged voting process ensued with ties, runoffs, and time-consuming debates. Of course, we eventually had the test, but we bought a few days' delay in the meantime. A few weeks later, Mr. Guo announced that the midterm exam would be held the following Wednesday. The same classmate spoke up, saying that that would be an inappropriate choice of date for the big test, due to the fact that Wednesday was an important traditional holiday in America. Mr. Guo asked which holiday that was, to which the chap responded with spontaneous creativity, National Fruit Day. He then spun a colorful, completely spurious tale about the origins of this holiday and how it is celebrated in America, involving special costumes and ritual games with various items of fruit. And that's exactly what came to pass on the Wednesday, rather than our midterm exam, which was delayed a few days. This is the final story with Mr. Guo, but one of my classmates in that group was a tall, lanky fellow who I shall refer to as John B. Now, John B. was chronically absent from Chinese class, more than likely to be found hanging out in the parking lot smoking cigarettes. And finally, Mr. Guo became impatient with John B.'s absentee record, and he let us know that he was going to report John B. to the school authorities. One of John B.'s running mates implored Mr. Guo not to do that, not to report him. Why not? Asked Mr. Guo. He never comes to class. His friend responded, John B. has a troubled family situation. His wife has just given birth to another child, their third. And he's working part-time jobs to stay in school. Mr. Guo was shocked to hear that 16-year-old John B. was already a father of 3. The instigator then produced 3 baby pictures, random pictures he'd collected somewhere, none of which bore any resemblance to John B., who continued to hang out in the parking lot, and that was that. So it went. Now, years later, as I reflected on some of these misadventures, after I moved to Hong Kong and experienced my own culture shock and surprises, it seemed to me that there was a pattern of karmic payback awaiting me. So there's a moral to that story, and I think you should take note. But anyway, when it came time for college applications, my short list focused on schools that had good Chinese programs and good international relations programs. And I ended up, obviously, enrolling in Princeton. And here I was really attracted by the East Asian Studies Department's program. I chose that as my major. My coursework in Asian Studies concentrated mainly on Chinese language and literature, and I benefited enormously from the extraordinarily gifted and dedicated faculty of the department, for which I am extremely grateful. I chose education as my minor field of study, and I later applied for certification from the state of New Jersey as a teacher of Chinese at the secondary level. The process required applicants to be observed and evaluated in a classroom setting by a teacher certified in the same subject. But since I was the first to apply for certification in Chinese language teaching at the secondary level, there was no certified teacher available to observe me. The authorities wisely determined that in these circumstances, I was probably best qualified to observe myself. And in the end, that's what was agreed upon. I was allowed to observe myself in the classroom, and I must say I gave myself high marks. I also took up the study of Sanskrit while here at Princeton, and I gave serious thought to continuing at the graduate level with a focus on comparative philosophy and religion.